Welcome back to the podcast, all my friends, colleagues, and listeners. We're so excited to have you back on Dream Jobs. I've got an amazing guest today, and I just can't wait to sponge up all of his knowledge. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in with a little bit of a bio. Christopher Dedeyan is a professional speaker and peak performance expert who helps entrepreneurs, leaders, and employees alike manage stress, increase productivity, and have more energy. He always gets his message across in a humoristic, charming, and energetic, passionate way. He does this through coaching, through courses, through podcast agency, nonprofit work. He's just a super busy guy. So I want to have you all join me in welcoming Christopher. Thanks for joining today.
Andy, thank you very much, man. Thank you for that great introduction as well. Definitely looking forward to having this great conversation with you, as we've been definitely connecting lately off the podcast world. You were on my podcast, and I just truly loved vibing with you. So I know we're going to have a great conversation that's going to bring massive value to your audience.
So I've got a ton of questions for you. The way we normally format the show is we talk about what you're currently doing, how your businesses function, kind of day in the life and all that. And then we track back to how did you go through education? How did you get into this space? And then we go to the future. Like a good movie, 3-part act, we'll hit it all. So why don't you break down what your collection of businesses do, the synergies between them, and kind of the people you serve?
Okay, I love the way, because my brain works exactly like that. You kind of gave the structure of what we're going to do, so I know exactly how to hit it with that, so I do appreciate that. So my business, a bit like you mentioned, is called Dedeyan Enterprises. And within that, everything that we do within the business is for personal development and business development. And the way we go about it is 4 main pillars within the business. So there is the first pillar, which is Dedeyan speaking. So that's me being a professional speaker, going on stages, getting hired by Fortune 500 companies, talking to their employees and colleagues of how to become high-performing individuals in their personal life and business, as well as the goal is to have other speakers under the brand and agency. So that's Dedeyan speaking. Then I have Dedeyan coaching, which is the executive one-on-one coaching. Once again, I'm the only coach right now, but definitely do have a plan in the future to have a certification to get coaches to really be able to serve these top tier CEOs, entrepreneurs, C-suites that really want to go to that next level in executive one-on-one coaching. Then we go into the third pillar, which is our podcast agency, kind of like you alluded to, which essentially our podcast agency is something that is a great marketing tool for these top tier entrepreneurs and CEOs that have great ideologies, methodologies, services, or products that they want to put out there. And the reason why I created this with my partner, Todd, is because that was a product that I was using to grow my business as a speaker and coach. And as it was just blowing up and I was referring so many people to the company that I was working at, somebody came to me and said, hey, let's build this together for your brand to serve your community. So that's the podcast agency. And finally, the last one, which is actually coming out live in the beginning of this year, 2023, in February, it's going to be Dedeyan Academy, which is going to be an online course on peak performance and on how to become a high achieving individual in every area for your life for entrepreneurs, C-suites, and execs. Once again, start working on the flagship product within there, and there's going to be other courses within that. So that's the 4 main pillars and everything that goes within that.
That's awesome. I know a lot of people that listen to this show are either beginning or aspiring coaches or authors, or so many people do this stuff. A question I have for you, maybe in your own experience or what you've seen out there, is it's a very natural progression to have a course and a book and a coaching program and try to do speaking. It seems like people don't try to do one of those without trying to do all 4. Is that kind of the thing about being a high level, let's call it advisor as the collection?
Okay, I love this question, Andy. You have it spot on. So in a perspective and the way that I just drew it out of how my business works and the way that you just correlated to every other person that is in the industry, it's really easy to see like, oh my God, you have to do all of it. And this is what the aspect is. But we're kind of just talking about it in a surface level of where I'm at today in 2023. Like I've been doing this for literally like more than half a decade. I started off, the first thing I did was speaking, and I was a top tier speaker, and I was going on stages, and it started off in like schools, and we'll talk about how I got as a speaker, but that's how it started. And then from me being on stages, people wanted more of me, and they're like, hey, do you have a coaching service? So then that naturally came about, and I realized me being a coach was just refining my skill as a speaker, because essentially it's the same ideology or approach of how to communicate eloquently, an ideology, and how your person that's taking that information, how they absorb it and understand it. So I'm like, all right, cool. So that was the two next things. And then as it grew, as everything was going, naturally everything else happened. Like I said, like I just kind of alluded to the podcast agency, the only reason I created it is because it was a service that I was using. And then my executive clients were like, hey, Chris, how do you get on shows? How do you do this? How do you grow your business? I told them about it. And then I'm like, oh, let me create this service for them. And then finally the academy is because, as you're kind of noticing and you kind of alluded to, my time is getting a lot more scarce within the week, especially that I have a lot of projects. And I'm like, how do I impact more people? And I can't just do it on a one-to-one basis, which is great, but I have to be able to do it to one-to-many. So creating a course that's going to stay over time, an evergreen aspect, is going to be possible. So once again, all of that is there, but it's not something you start in one shot. No, pick one, concentrate on it, focus in. Once you get really great, everything else comes into place. But these are like, happens years in a time. You don't do everything at once at the same time, because honestly, you're just not going to create it in a proper way. So that's my ideology with that.
And knowing that there are a lot of people who want to eventually become speakers, what is it like crafting a keynote where you may be at an event with 5 people or an event with 5,000 people, but I know a lot of people are discouraged to try speaking because they feel like I need to be a millionaire and explain how I became a millionaire, not I have a framework and a mindset that's contagious and can help other people.
Yeah. Okay. Great question once again, Andy. You're 2 for 2 here. So it starts with the mindset, right? Because you just alluded to, there's a lot of imposter syndrome. Everybody has that. That's the first thing I realized when I was a coach, bro. Everybody has a certain level of anxiety. They call it in so many different ways. Some people say it's anxiety. Some people say it's fear. Some people say it's overwhelm, but everybody has that. It's a human trait. And the aspect of am I good enough? Everybody feels that. Towards you're a millionaire, billionaire, starting up, middle, everybody feels that. So that's first thing, is acknowledging those feelings as a normality of a human being. First thing is that. Second thing is looking at what are the skills that you have? What are the stories that you have went through within your life that you think is valuable to put out there? And then to really pinpoint that, you'll be able to see that's my UPS, my unique selling proposition, or my added value in the marketplace. And then once that is like somewhere like, hey, you know what, this is an added value that doesn't exist in the marketplace, or maybe it exists and I could do it better, then you start polishing the ideology of, let me go speak upon that aspect. It doesn't have to be, I'm a millionaire, let me speak about that. And that could be a niche too. It could be as simple as, like, okay, we're going to talk about my background. I'm dyslexic. So for people who don't know what dyslexia is, it's a learning disability that has to do with reading and writing. At 8 years old, I got diagnosed. The first ever speech that I gave, Andy, was because I was succeeding as a real estate broker in the great region of Montreal, where I'm from in Canada. And they invited me to speak how I'm succeeding as a dyslexic entrepreneur. I had no speaking experience, did not know anything about the industry. But once I went on stage, I realized, oh, this is what the universe, God, our creator, really built me to do. And then from there, I started structuring everything to change my brokerage business to becoming a speaker. But for so long, before speaking about high performance and so on, I was leveraging speaking about dyslexia. I was going in classrooms, speaking to kids, then going to universities, then talking to professors, and then going into the corporate world. So what I'm saying here, if you do want to become a speaker, number one, let me bring it very practical for you. Number one, have that strong mindset to believe that you could do it. First and foremost, if you don't have that, you're not going to succeed. To do so, I would suggest to consume positive growth, information towards books, podcasts, and so on. Number two, I would say pinpoint what is your unique skill that you want to talk about. And number three, once those two things are done, start seeing what I could leverage to get to that end goal of speaking about what I want to speak about. Is there a skill set that I can leverage? Is there an experience that I can leverage that's maybe different than somebody else? And then from there, your speaking career will grow.
I always use, and I mean, I guess let's just make a parallel with coaching. I always use the example of you might be a personal trainer at a gym. And after a while, you realize there's only so many hours in the week and you can only see so many people, and your income is based on the amount of people you can see. So then you want to start doing some online or at-home coaching programs for more people. Create something that is evergreen that you can sell or consult with people in your off hours. So you do that. And then you want to add some kind of peripheral service. You're also going to do nutrition. Maybe you get certified in some other things. Then you start coaching people on how to become a fitness coach, and then you start coaching people on how to be a business owner, and then you start coaching people on how to perform. And by the top, you're not even talking about fitness at all. You're talking about how to run a business or how to be an executive, because you get that experience as you go up. So, for example, when I started speaking, I mean, I guess I've been speaking a lot, but in one example, I owned a hard cider company in Washington State, and I got asked to be on a panel of alcohol owners. So there was one person from a distillery, one person from a winery, one person from a brewery, and I got to be the cider guy because I happened to be like the one that was nearest down the street. But this particular event was in front of a group of investors, and then I got asked to come back and talk about small beverage companies. And then I got asked to come back to talk about beverage companies, period. And then it was beverage investing. And then it was business investing, and the same thing. It goes all the way up. So right now, my suggestion would be there's lots of online events. There's local development groups, masterminds. A lot of people love the panel discussion. That's a big thing right now. And that's an easy way to dip your toes in because you don't have to come in with the script. You're not the only person. A moderator will direct questions to you. The thing is, joining groups and letting people know that you're available for speaking is such a big deal. And so, Christopher, I'm really curious, what is maybe a story from one of your favorite speeches you've ever given, or if you've ever felt nervous, or when was kind of the overcoming the stage fright, if you've ever had it?
Okay. So first of all, before answering that, I want to kind of allude back to what you said, and I want to highlight so your listeners and your viewers really get it really honed in, because what you just explained is what I was explaining. Look at something that you have a skill set, and then as you're leveraging that skill set and you develop your speaking career and you become more eloquent as a speaker, it evolves. You gave that example of like, hey, you were the guy that was selling a particular alcohol product. And then from there became the guy that is able to run the business of the alcohol, then became a specialist of this, that, and the other. You broke it down. And then at the end, like you said, if you're doing it right, they're going to be calling you to speak about, hey, how do you run a business with X amount of employees, revenuing X and Y and Z? That's how it starts. Another example we could do is literally like Gary Vee. I pretty much think everybody that's probably listening to this knows Gary Vaynerchuk. In the beginning, he was called to like, how did you grow your father's wine library business from X dollars to X dollars? And then how did you do this to that? And then how did you do the marketing side? And he's like, oh, I did it with the marketing. Then he's like, I became a marketer. I became marketing agency. And now it's like that whole brand. But it starts like that. Anybody that you guys look up to in the speaking world, that's how it started. So I just wanted to highlight that because you gave such a great example, Andy, of your personal life within that. Now, to answer your question in regards
and Gary Vaynerchuk didn't set out to make a media company, VaynerMedia. He set out to be a wine salesman, teach people how to do that. And now he's got this empire of podcasts and courses and speaking. Guess what? Maybe I'm following those footsteps. I guess I never put it together of his exact path.
Well, 100%, right? And the reason why he did that is because he utilized tools and skills to grow his father's company with the marketing strategy. And then he's like, hey, maybe I could teach this to other people, which is the marketing business. And then he's like, hey, what else can I add? So 100%. So going back to the question that you had in regards to being nervous on stage or talking about like a moment that I was nervous and so on. Right now, as a speaker, to be quite honest, I never get nervous. Now that sounds extremely, extremely cocky, right? Or maybe a bit like full of myself. But here's the actual aspect of how to unpack it or how that goes. Andy, have you ever been, when you were like in high school or elementary or any form of schooling, that you had to imagine do an exam, all right? And the exam was, let's say, Monday morning. And you had the whole weekend to study and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get down and study. And then Friday rolls around, you're like, oh, you know what? Friday, the school week just finished. Let me just chill with my friends. And then you're like, oh, I'll do it Saturday. And then Saturday happens. You're like, oh man, it's a beautiful day. It's sunny. You know what? It's not worth it to do it today. Let me just go do that. I'll do it Sunday. And then Sunday rolls around and Sunday you're like, oh man, whatever. And then you hardly get in maybe 30 minutes before going to bed of studying. And then Monday rolls around and you're getting ready to do this exam. How do you usually feel in that scenario?
pretty panicked.
Pretty panicked and nervous, right?
Yeah,
Now, exactly
I guess
that same
I would
scenario.
feel unprepared, yeah.
Unprepared, panic, right? Now, exactly that same scenario. Let's switch it. Friday comes around, your friend's like, hey, let's go chill. You're like, nah, I got to study. And then you study, you put in the time. Saturday is a beautiful day. You're like, oh, you know what? Let me just bring my books outside in the backyard under the sun, study. You put in your time. Sunday comes around, you're like, hey, let me just put a bit more hours, get that solid aspect. Happens once again, you study a couple hours. Monday morning rolls around, how do you feel?
Great. Prepared.
Great. You might even say excited, right? Like when I used to do that, I was like, yo, I'm excited. Give me this exam. Let me show my teacher how much of a boss I was studying this and let me just kill it. You have that excitement, right?
Totally.
So that's what speaking is. Now, what do I mean by that? If you prepare your speech and you know your content in and out, you don't look at it as being nervous. It's like, oh my God, I'm excited to offer this gift to this community. So the reality is, if you're putting in the time and the work, you're never going to get nervous. People that usually do get nervous in the professional world, I'm talking about here, I'm not talking about people that has a stage fright. In the professional world, is they're 100% putting in time so they know who they are, so they don't get nervous. When I get nervous, honestly, is when I get a new gig, I sign up for it, they send me a beautiful amount of income to do that speech, and then I'm sitting down to be like, what am I going to talk to them about? Or I'm creating the speech. I have a moment of like, can I do this? Can I not? Like I said, it's normal to get those thoughts. And then as I start creating my keynote, I realize, oh no, this is going to be amazing. And I'm really excited about it. So that's right now. Now, granted, in the beginning of my career, was that always the case? It wasn't, brother. I remember that first speech that I kind of alluded to. They had told me it was going to be about 200 people in the room, bro. Andy, I walked into that room that day. I opened the door and it wasn't 200 people. It was more like 1,000 people. Bro, at this point, my heart is beating through my chest. I am sweating bullets. I'm like, what the heck did I get myself into? I'm like a little broker, going to talk about how I'm succeeding as a dyslexic entrepreneur. I'm sitting down, Andy, and this is like a really well put together event. There is the speakers are like doctors, professors. They have so many letters after their name. I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? That moment, I was extremely nervous in a sense, right? And then the moment that I went on stage and kind of started off, I realized that was what I was meant to do and kind of let the universe kind of guide me in that regards. So that was a moment that I had the biggest aspect of oh my God, kind of like a fear or like a doubt in a certain regards. But even at that, for me, I think I was always meant to be a speaker and a communicator. So it kind of went easy in that regards. But yeah, those are the examples that I would kind of say.
I love that. Well, and despite being prepared, sometimes something pushes you off kilter and you just didn't expect it,
Yes.
So many people get a cold or something, or you get almost in a car accident on the way there, or somebody gives you weird news, and there's so many unpredictable things. I'm very curious, and I haven't heard a lot of the science, but a lot of very brilliant people have grown up with dyslexia. My favorite entrepreneur, Sir Richard Branson, is dyslexic. My favorite podcaster, Dax Shepard, dyslexic. And they talk pretty frequently about having to, first of all, at what grade they broke through of people telling you, you're dumb, you can't read, but it's your brain processes in a different way. And they were encouraged to learn in a different way. Sir Richard dropped out of school and started a magazine and music business, and now he just launched the first orbital launch from the UK on Monday. Big deal. Anyhow, what, in your experience, maybe give us a little Reader's Digest version of that first dyslexic speech. How did it affect you as an entrepreneur, and what are some of the facts about that? Just curious.
Okay, awesome. I love this because a lot of my philanthropy work that I do is in the learning disability world, definitely working on changing and reforming education system all throughout the board, because I truly do believe that it's not necessarily structured for the society that we live in today. Back in the day, it was made for becoming workers and so on, and it's not necessarily cultivated for different types of learning. And dyslexia is really, or any type of learning disability, is really just a different type of learning. And with our difficulties, the structure of the education system that was given to us is not very malleable or advantageous for our type of learning. So here's the thing, there's two fronts to this. Like you're saying, you mentioned some big hitters there that are dyslexic and successful. And you know what? There's a lot of dyslexic entrepreneurs that are succeeding extremely well. But the counterbalance, there's a lot of people that are dyslexic or have learning disabilities, they're in the penal system, they're in prison. And the reason why is because if you have certain difficulties when you're young, and if you come from on top of that a difficult family background, it is really easy to take bad decisions in life because you're not getting positively reinforced within the structure of society that was given to you, which is the education system. So there's that balance first and foremost. Now, if you're lucky enough to have learning disability, not lucky enough, sorry. If you have learning disabilities and you're lucky enough to have a great structure at home, so you're not just, you're worrying about the school, but then you don't have to worry about the family life, because if you have both of them, it's really difficult. But if you have that family structure that's very well, then you have a high chance of succeeding if you put the proper structures, methodologies in place for you to succeed. Now, once you succeed and you become an adult with learning disabilities, specifically dyslexia in this case, honestly, Andy, I truly believe it's an advantage. Here's why. First reason, at a very young age, just like many people had dyslexia, I was told that I wasn't going to succeed in the way that society talks about success. There was even a point saying, hey, maybe I won't even finish high school, which I finished, got a college degree. Actually, my background is fireman studies, which is completely different than what I'm doing. But I started succeeding because I understood what I needed to learn. I got the proper team around me. When I mean team, is the proper teachers, methodologies, and ideologies that I needed to learn. Once you start succeeding with that, then you go into the real world. You utilize that experience that you've had of failing so much and understanding what real failure is when you quit. But if you fail at an exam, at reading something, and you just continue and then you start succeeding, you realize what success and failure is. So as an entrepreneur, you get into the real world, and anybody that's an entrepreneur knows that you're going to fail. Like 9 businesses out of 10, you're going to fail, and the 10th one will potentially work out for you, right? That's the ratio. So for anybody to succeed in entrepreneurial world, you have to have a thick skin and understand what failure is. So I think that's the first thing. Because at a very young age, we understand what failing is and winning is in regards to we failed so much. That's the first advantage. Second advantage, our brain, biochemistry of our brain works completely different to somebody that is not dyslexic, let's say, okay? We're able to spot our patterns a lot more. We're able to see opportunities in certain places that people don't see. Granted, there's certain things that are more difficult for us, but we have advantages. That's why the main world or the main careers that people with dyslexia go into is either entrepreneurship, artistry, or architecture, because we understand patterns, we understand certain fixtures within that. And a lot of entrepreneurs go into that world as well because we see those patterns, we see those opportunities coming about because our brain works differently. And once again, one thing I would allude to over here as well is that in our education system, they pretty much tell us to think one way or act one way. And then once you get into the real world, people want to hire somebody that thinks outside of the box. But the whole education system is putting you in the box. And if you have a learning disability, you weren't able to fit in the box, so we're already outside the box. So if you're able to succeed and then go into the workforce, you're the one that's going to get hired before somebody else because your ideas are different than other people. It's just naturally. It's just the biochemistry of your brain, how it works. So I would pinpoint those main elements. Number one, we're more resilient because we failed so much. We understand what failure is. And number two, the biochemistry of our brain spots different things that other people that do not have learning disabilities or specifically dyslexia do not spot out.
I love that. That's fascinating. So you mentioned your schooling, upbringing up to university age. Now, what was the first thing out of school? Did you start in real estate? Maybe explain the progression of how you got to where you are now.
Okay. So real quick, I'm going to have to tell you the relationship I had with dyslexia because that played a huge part of my career and kind of going to unpack that. So at 8 years old, my parents noticed that I wasn't reading up to the same levels as my peers. They used to compare me to my sister, which she's 2 years older, and used to be like, he's not reading at the same level that she was at his age. And they did some research, got me tested, finally got diagnosed with dyslexia. And they found the proper school that was a school specialized for students with learning disabilities called Vanguard in the Great Region of Montreal. And at that point, when my parents came and told me in the middle of the school year, we're going to take you out of the school that you're in right now and go to a specialized school, all I understood was I'm going to a special school. As a kid, you don't want that. You're going to lose your friends. You don't want that. So I didn't know what dyslexia was. Then once I got into school, the first thing I realized was like, oh my God, I'm not alone in this. There's 100 other kids like me that have learning disabilities. So I got more comfortable with it. I understood it, and I learned the proper tools and methodologies that I need to succeed. Then once I started succeeding in high school, the last couple of years of high school, like everybody, you start thinking about what's next. What are you going to do as a career? And for me, the first thing that popped up into my mind is I want to be a lawyer. I like wearing nice suits, even though I'm not wearing a suit right now. I'm wearing a sweater. I'm in Canada. It's cold right now. But usually I like being suited up. I like having conversations. I'm like, yeah, let me be a lawyer. As I started researching what it takes to be a lawyer, I realized like 85% of the job is reading and writing. Being dyslexic, I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. Let me look for a job that has no reading or very minimal reading. So what I found was fireman. I'm like, oh my God, that's cool. The fire trucks, the adrenaline, that hit another part of my personality. I'm like, let's go into that. Couple of years, actually 3 years specifically to try and fail to finally get into the academy, the fireman academy, because it's not easy to get into that program. Finally got in. Started succeeding into that. Started working at a company, Pratt & Whitney company, which is called, it's a company that makes airplane motors. And I was becoming an industrial fireman there. As I started doing that, I realized just naturally, this is not what I was meant to do in my life. I was meant to be an entrepreneur. Like Andy, I remember when the teacher used to come into the classroom and say, kids, put yourself in teams. Even before she finished the word 3, I had my head up and I looked for who reads the best, who writes the best. Let me put a team together. Let me delegate the work and we'll get the grade together. Delegation 101, entrepreneurship. I remember in college when I used to fail, I used to go after the class and negotiate with my professor of like, oh no, that's not what I meant in the exam. When I wrote that down, this is what I meant. I used to negotiate my grade up, negotiation 101. So I realized my whole life I've been preparing myself to be an entrepreneur without even knowing. So then I decided to go into brokerage, started succeeding there, and then kind of like I alluded to, had an opportunity to go speak on stage. And then from that moment on, I realized that's what I had to do. I stopped everything that I was doing in a brokerage in a very short period of time. I switched towards being a full-time speaker and coach. And everybody around me thought I was crazy. In a certain sense, I thought I was crazy too, but I knew that that was what I needed to do. And then years later, last thing I'm going to say here, and I'm kind of going to get off my rant here. Years later, when I was giving a speech in the beginning of my speaking career, I was talking about this progression. And a lady that was in the stands came up to me afterwards, and she's like, Chris, it's crazy how afraid you were of reading. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. What do you mean? She's like, you'd rather go into a building that is on fire instead of reading. And then I realized, holy moly, my fear was so predominantly controlling me of reading that I decided to go figuratively in buildings that are on fire instead of sitting down and doing a job that was more meant for me that had to do with reading and writing.
Wow. That's powerful. So I've gotten to spend a little bit of time with you getting to know about your business, which I am honored to do so. And one of the things that I really value about you that I'd love to have you share with my audience is over the years, you explained you've had the snowball of working with higher and higher level people. Now you work with a lot of executive and C-suite and founders. And when you get to that point, everyone kind of picks the person they serve. And you've described the person that you serve across all of your businesses. And it's, I'm sure, variable when there are, up and comers that you'd like to mentor or super high level people at these blue chip, Forbes companies you'd love to work with. But at the end of the day, you told me your goal for the long period is to serve the same people, but serve a ton more of them. And that's the introduction of doing more speaking, and that's the introduction of creating courses. And you have this passion for one-on-one coaching and helping tight groups of people succeed. And I love the wording that you use about being high performers. But I would love to hear a little bit about the vision of where you want your company to go. You're inevitably going to be launching new pillars of this business, new businesses in the future. But I love the way that you want to continue to serve the same person and hopefully multiply that to lots of people. I think you told me at one point that you wanted to serve a couple million people, or you had a number that you wanted to affect eventually. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you hope to continue sharing your same messages and systems with the masses.
Thank you, Andy, for teeing that up for me, because that is something I'm truly passionate about. And word to the wise, let me just kind of give you guys, for all the listeners that are entrepreneurs here, I truly believe as you build your company, and let's say you're the head of the company towards the founder, the CEO, whatever the case is, your predominant job is to know your mission and vision in such an eloquent way and so specifically, and then continually mention that mission and vision. And then once you understand that, people are going to come work for the mission and vision. They're not going to come work for Christopher. They're not going to come work for Andy. They're not going to come work for Dedeyan Enterprises. Those are all given names. They're going to come work for the mission and vision. And then they're going to come in within their skill set. So as a top tier entrepreneur, as the C-suite exec, all your job is understand what is the mission of the organization, what is the why, how are you doing it, and what are you doing specifically? You know, that's the concept of Simon Sinek, the way he kind of breaks it down. That's the actual reality. I truly believe in that. So what you're asking me is kind of what is my mission and vision within Dedeyan Enterprises and what my goals are. So here's it is. My goal is to optimize people who want to perform, to get them from where they are to where they want to be. Because I truly believe every single individual that is on this beautiful blue earth of ours was endowed of a gift. Now, this gift, many people call it your purpose, the light, your calling, your talents, whatever it is. And for some people, this gift is like, hey, I jump the best, I run the best. Some people is like, I network the best. Some people is like, hey, I'm a great parent. Some people is, I am an amazing real estate professional, whatever it is. But if every single person lives within their gifts, they're going to be so much more happy, which is going to make entail all of society better, more empathetic, more purpose-driven, more successful. And as a society, we're going to move forward. So my goal is to tap into those people. And I said, people who want to perform. Like you said, I work with top-tier individuals. I don't work with Honda Civics to make them into Ferraris. I work with Ferraris to make them into F1s. I'm a very specific niche that I'm working with. But I know that your audience resonates with this because they're most probably these types of people. So that's the thing that I serve on. And then from there, you ask me, what was my number goals? I have this kind of like outlandish goal in my mind. I don't know if I'll ever achieve it, but it really doesn't matter if I'll achieve it. It really matters that it's a target that I'm working towards, is I want to impact 1 billion lives before I die. Now, tangibly, how can I really state that, or how can I even measure that? Really doesn't matter, because the way I look at it is if I'm doing things to really try to impact 1 billion lives, I think I'm going to get so much closer. And if there's one person here listening to this and something I say resonates with them, and then they go repeat it to somebody else, and then that person resonates and go repeat it to somebody else, and then it kind of goes down that chain, even though I don't know any of those people, maybe they'll never be a client, maybe they'll never hear about me ever again on this, while they're on this earth, I feel like I've impacted these people in some way, shape, or form. And by doing that, I am serving the universe as a vehicle with my purpose. And then they could do the same because their purpose is different. If everybody does it, once again, as a society, we go forward with more joy, love, happiness, respect, empathy, and just life will be better, in my personal opinion. So that's the way I would answer to that.
I love that. So as we approach the runway to stick the landing of every episode, I have a series of questions that I do that are just kind of fun. So the first one is a 3-parter, and it's all about you. This is a podcast about entrepreneurs. So, Christopher, if you could do any job in the universe for one day, have you always dreamt of being an astronaut or a professional athlete or something wild?
I also
do it to put people off.
Legit, I would want to be a football player, soccer player, more specifically, the real football, and representing my country at the World Cup. Maybe I'm saying that because I just came back from Qatar watching the World Cup, and I've always played football my whole life, soccer once again. That would be, I think, a very proud moment just to experience that. So I would say that could be very interesting on a bucket list item in that regard, if there was another alternate universe that I would do that in.
And if given the choice, would you represent Canada or Armenia?
Oh, you're cutting deep, my brother. Oh my God, you're cutting very deep.
We have a couple Canadian listeners.
Yeah, you're cutting very deep right now. Okay, I'm going to unpack this. Sorry, you're going to have to permit me to unpack this a bit. So I am Armenian descent. You're laughing. You're enjoying this. I'm Armenian descent. I'm born in Montreal. Very proud to be Canadian, French Canadian. But if I had the option, my roots are from Armenia. So I would represent, if I had the option, I would represent Armenia, to be quite honest.
That would be so awesome. Yeah. Okay, The second part of this question is, if you had to go back to teenage you, university age you, and go in a different direction, was there another occupation you always thought you'd be good at? Obviously, firefighting. And lawyer, I guess. You kind of said yours.
Yeah, if there's other things that I thought I would do, I would be those ones. But to be quite honest, I wouldn't change anything. I'm truly, truly, truly blessed to be doing something I love. Like there isn't a lot of people I know this that has the opportunity to wake up every single day and be like, oh, I love what I do. When I go on stages, I'm like in like seven heaven. Like it's my true purpose. It's not even me most of the times when I'm on stage. It kind of sounds crazy when I'm saying that, but I feel like there's just greater power that uses my vehicle and transmits that. I don't think I would get that same feeling if I was a fireman, because like I said, I picked fireman. I loved it, but I picked it out of fear. And lawyer probably would have been the same thing. So I truly believe that I ended up where I needed to end up.
I love that. Okay, the 50,000 foot level is if money didn't matter, you got Elon or Oprah money, whatever, but you still had to work. What would you do? Have you always thought about wanting to go to space or to, own an F1 team or something?
Okay, another great question. I would just be more in philanthropy. I would just look at different ways of what passions me and what I could do to help society move forward with that. And if right off the top of the base, like what it would be for that, it would be 100% everything that has to do with learning disability and the education system, because that's what hits home with me. These guys, they talk about space because they're truly in love with space. And if you go look at Elon Musk and all that aspect, he was actually somebody that the space world really played an effect part of his childhood, the Star Wars and the Star Treks and all that. That's why he alluded to that a lot when he's doing now. For me, it's because I had the experience of being dyslexic, and I want to help all future generation of students that have learning disabilities and my future kids as well, because this is something hereditary. So I would do a lot of philanthropy work, either in the obviously the learning disability world and as well in Armenia, because as you guys kind of understood, very proud Armenian.
Love that. Okay, there's two more. So this is the rounding you out, rounding the audience out, leaving in style. So Christopher, what is something right now that you are just particularly proud of? It could be work life or personal life, but what is something you're walking into this new year that just has a little extra pep in your step?
Great question. Honestly, this year so every single year I do my 10 goals. I do a yearly affirmation and I do my vision board. And this year, a part of my yearly affirmation is it's the year of accomplishments for me. And the reason why that is because I have many projects that I've been working on, literally some for several years, that are going to come into fruition this year. And I feel very proud that I'm going to be able to first launch my book officially this year, launch other projects as well in the TV world, hopefully, and just get on more stages. So I feel like there's a lot of things that I've been putting in the back end work for years that are going to come together this year. So that's what I'm kind of very excited about. It has that little extra pep in my step.
A lot of those things, writing a book is the most obvious example. It's a lot of pay it forward. It takes a long time to create a course or any of those things. So that's very exciting to see it pay off. And what is something that maybe you are loving, a podcast or a book or something you would recommend to the audience to help on their journey this year?
Andy, that is like probably one of my favorite questions. At the same time, it's a question that I hate the most. And here's why, and I'm going to unpack that. Because that kind of creates a supposition that there's one book or one course or one thing that's going to change everything for you. And I don't believe in that. I believe in the ideology of becoming a reader, becoming a consumer of positive content. So I could list out, and I will list out in a few seconds here, some books that I really recommend or some courses and so on and so forth. But first thing I recommend is create the ideology of like, I am not reading a book, but I am a reader. So it becomes a natural thing for you for the rest of your life to read every single day, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the case is. And if you do that with the quantity of things you read, the quantity of things that you consume, that will compound over time. And that's what the success will create. It's not one thing. It's the compounding effect. So that's the first thing I want to say to that. Now, in regards to some things that really have changed my life when it comes to like books or whatever, obviously, there's some obvious ones, which is, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But some that are maybe a bit less known, I would say, maybe this one I can't necessarily say a little bit less known, but Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He was an Auschwitz survivor, a psychologist, amazing. The authors that I follow a lot is Robert Greene, Malcolm Gladwell. Suggest to read all of their books. And another one is Dr. Joe Dispenza. consume all of his information, all of his things. I think just in those aspects, you're going to be spot on. And as well, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan as well. So those are some of the things that I'll kind of suggest your community to go towards, look at, unpack, and so on.
Yeah, and you said Simon Sinek too. I like his stuff.
Yes.
All good things. Great. Well, that's so much for people to go and do. I really appreciate all of your insights. What are the best ways for people to engage with you online and consume your media?
Thank you for that, Andy. So, I mean, the best way to go about it, honestly, is just on all social platforms. The ones that I'm the most active on would 100% be my Instagram, my YouTube channel. I have a bunch of educational, entrepreneurial stuff. If you are we talked about speaking, if you are interested in potentially becoming a speaker, I have some stuff on there. I bring my teammate with me and we go around the world when I'm speaking. We have some vlogs with that. So you kind of get that aspect from like the hotel room to the stage. LinkedIn, I'm very much on as well. And if you guys are interested, and this is something I'm going to offer to Andy, to you and your listeners, if you are interested in this has resonated with you to really make 2023 the best year, or wherever you're at within the year, to make that moment the best for you and really want to level up, and you feel like, hey, I'm like there, but there's something kind of blocking me. I feel like there's like a ceiling atop of me and I don't know how to explode it, and you want to go to that next level. If you want to go with coaching or speaking to get to that next level, go check out my website and see how we could help you out with that. And the website is dedeyanenterprises.com. So it's dedeyanenterprise.com, and my team and I will connect with you and see how we could support you with your goals and ambitions of what you want to do this year and the next years to come.
I love that. Christopher, thanks so much for being on the show. And all of the stuff will be in the show notes, but in case you guys are in the car or something, Dedeyan is spelled Dedeyan, enterprises.com. This has been another production of the Dream Job Show. Thanks so much to everyone. Thanks to our producer, Jessica Carmen, everybody at Daydreamer Network, and all of our listeners like you. We've had another great episode. We look forward to seeing you next week. Good night and good luck.
Thank you, Andy.